Crowdsourcing Love is brought to you by First Rounds on Me. First Rounds on Me is a dating app that I love that encourages you to actually go out on dates so that you can create a real, genuine connection in person rather than trying to through your phone screen. First Rounds on Me is great because it cuts out all the small talk and helps plan your first date. You can only have one date per day and can only chat with your date 12 hours before the date starts. No more pen pals, go out and get to know someone in person. I used First Rounds on Me multiple times during my 28 dates in 28 days challenge. I liked it because it allowed men to, start out by, asking you either to a coffee date, a juice date, or a cocktail date. It was fun to see different places that they proposed. And then once you agreed to the date, it automatically put it in your calendar, which I thought was really helpful for staying organized while dating. And yeah, the guys were really cute, really sweet, and I just loved how efficient it was. So I definitely recommend this app. Welcome back to Crowdsourcing Love. I'm Marin, your host, the girl who went on 28 dates in 28 days. You all know the drill. I don't know if I should keep mentioning that, but it still feels relevant to bring up even though it's May. I can't believe it's been 3 months. Why do I not have a boyfriend? I have Lindsey Metselaar today on the podcast. She offers insights into her sober dating journey, which I'm about to start my sober dating journey. My sober dating journey is a little different because I am not completely sober. I just need to, stop dating with massive beer goggles on. So she gives me some advice around that. We also discuss how she landed her finance bro husband. She argues that he's more of a finance nerd. Either way, she got married at 31 in New York City, which is quite the feat. And we also discuss, just her creative endeavors and being on Cringe Mountain at different junctures in her podcasting career, but how anyone who wants to accomplish anything, you gotta go up Cringe Mountain to get to the other side. So enjoy the podcast and looking forward to you guys continuing to subscribe, rate, and review. All right. Welcome back to Crowdsourcing Love. I'm Marin, and today we have Lindsey from We Met at Acme. How are you, Lindsey?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. You're my first guest ever, actually.
Oh my God.
So hopefully this is an iconic start to this podcasting journey. But I wanted to start out by just learning a little bit more about you. I know you're a native New Yorker. And you've been in the podcasting game for like 5 years. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and your start in this space?
Yeah. So I did grow up in New York. I am 32. I'm married. But when I started my podcast, We Met at Acme, I was very single, newly broken up with on my 27th birthday. Okay. And I was like, I can't believe there's not a dating podcast. Mm-hmm. Like, we have to talk about dating. Yep. It's so difficult, especially in New York. And there just needs to be more conversation around it. So I know you recently listened to my first episode, but I had a friend come over and we just started talking about dating and recording it. And I released it and was shocked that people even knew how to listen to a podcast at the time, and have been talking about dating with friends and professionals and therapists and celebrities and you, because you were a guest, ever since.
Yep. Okay, that's amazing. So speaking of like all these different people who you've had on your podcast, who has been your favorite guest so far?
Ooh, that's such a hard question. I really get something different out of every single one of my guests. So it's hard to name a favorite, but I definitely have guests that like I use some of the things that they've taught me to this day that have been really helpful. So one of them is my friend Sean Galanos. Do you follow him? I feel like you would love him.
No, but I should.
Yeah. He's really great. And he and I had a conversation about, instead of, because I hate like the "what are we" thing. Like, I just don't think that girls should say it. I feel like it takes away your power.
I agree.
And he introduced me to something that's kind of just like a check-in point. instead of like the what are we, but more about like how are we feeling? I'm really enjoying this. Like I'm really enjoying getting to know you and kind of knowing where you stand without having to give an ultimatum.
Okay, I love that a lot because I actually had that conversation like 2 weeks ago with the comedian where he asked me to be exclusive, but then I was like, I'm either, single or, like a girlfriend.
Yep.
And that kind of threw off our entire, I feel like, trajectory because then he was like, what does it mean to be a girlfriend or girlfriend boyfriend? And I was like, well, when we go in public, you don't just introduce me as Marin, you introduce me as this is my girlfriend Marin. And then everything else that's already been happening. But I think the major thing is just like really like professing it to the world, like we're together. And he felt like he would have to talk to his therapist before he could make that decision. And so I felt really like disempowered in that moment. And so in general, like, would you agree with like me saying what I said, or like, how would you advise me in that scenario?
1000%.
Okay.
I think when someone asks someone else to be exclusive, it's a cop out. And
Okay.
it's basically them saying like, I don't want you to hook up with anyone else, but I don't know what we're going to be. Like, I haven't decided about you yet.
Yeah.
And it's just buying them more time while they like fuck around. And
Yep.
I don't like that. I feel like you either ask someone to be your girlfriend or
Okay.
you're nothing. Like, but an exclusive thing, unless it's being used in a proper way, which I think the only way that it's properly used is if you just want to focus on each other.
Okay.
But I still, even that, I'm like, that's not a spoken thing that needs to happen, you know?
Yep. So if you were me in that scenario, like what would you have said to him when he said like I need to talk to my therapist? I'm not ready. Like how would you have handled it? Cuz I liked him and I didn't want to just completely, I'm somebody who can be so extreme and just want to walk away when there's like the slightest kind of uncomfortability. So what would you have done in that situation?
Well, can I ask, so how long had you guys been seeing each other?
So we were coming up on 2 months.
I don't think I would give 3 months.
Okay.
But I would be like, why do you need to talk to your therapist about it? Like, what is your therapist going to tell you that you don't already know? Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I would be curious about why he feels the need to do that.
Yeah, no, and I definitely, it kind of threw me off because I have an anxious attachment style. So then, like, I felt like everything was good and going in a certain direction. And then it, like, kind of, like, switched on me where I was all of a sudden in my anxious state again, where I, like, was wondering, like, I started to have self-doubt.
Right.
So that's really good advice. Okay, so kind of circling back to just getting to know you more. So you're born and raised in New York City, like we said. Why do you think New York City is so notoriously difficult to date in? What is it about this place?
This is the place where age really doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter if you're 40, if you're 50, if you're 20. Like, I just feel like age is really just a number, and so many people get married later. Like, if you get married at 28 in New York, you're like a child bride.
Yep.
But if you get married at 28 in like Arkansas, you're like an old maid at that point.
Totally.
And so it's just very different. Like, things happen later. People are more focused on their careers first and foremost.
Yep.
And then, dating kind of comes second for the most part. And so you have to really, really be like blown away by somebody if you want to date them in New York City. Like, it has to be someone really special. And also, there's so many interesting, dynamic people who live here.
Yep.
So the options in New York, a place like New York City versus a place like Arkansas, which I've never been in. I don't know why I'm harassing Arkansas. I'm so
Arkansas.
sorry. But I'm just assuming, there's a smaller pool, whereas in New York City, there's a lot more incredible, amazing people to choose from.
Yep. And I feel like there's always new people who are coming here. And so there's like a never ending supply of like fresh people as well.
Totally. Yeah.
That makes sense. So how old, because I know that you got married kind of recently.
Yeah.
How long ago did you get married?
It was a little over a year ago. So
Okay.
February 2022.
Oh, Mazel tov.
Thank you.
I know you're Jewish too. Is your husband Jewish?
Yeah, he is.
Okay. Was that a factor in selecting a partner? Was being the same like culture and religion important to you?
Yeah, that's a really good question because it actually wasn't for
Okay.
so long.
Yep.
I mostly dated non-Jews, and it wasn't because I was like rebelling. It was just like I dated people who I was attracted to.
Right.
And I just so happened to not meet a Jewish person that I was attracted to at the time.
Yeah.
Like nothing to do with religion. That's just how it had happened. And then when I ran into my now husband, I was like, oh my God, he's so cute. I wasn't really thinking about, is he Jewish or not? He just
Okay.
happened to be Jewish.
Yep.
And looking back, I'm very grateful for that because it's made things easier.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like in New York, because there are so many cultural backgrounds, I feel like every guy I've dated came from a different, ethnicity or cultural background or religion or something like that. So it's interesting to hear that you weren't specifically looking for that, but you kind of ended up there.
Totally.
But it's cool. Yeah.
Have you dated someone with the same religious background? And like, what's the difference between that person and like someone with a different one?
So for me, it's a question I ask kind of early on in dating, just because, again, as we've already talked about, I am looking for someone who I can build a life with. And like, now I've read the rules, by the way. I didn't read them prior to doing this challenge, and I'm kind of like, oh, maybe I should be like a little bit more coy. But we can circle back to that. So when it comes to like background and ethnicity and religious practices, I'm very open, and I'll date pretty much whatever as long as they're not atheists, because I am spiritual and I don't want them to like put that side of me down. But it is a conversation because it's like, will your parents accept me? Because I want to be with somebody whose family loves and supports our marriage, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
And so I want that like support to come from their foundation as well. And so if it's going to be like an uphill battle, it's probably not something I'd want to engage in.
That's totally fair.
Yeah. It's just like you have to pick your battles, kind
of.
Okay. So you guys got married at what age?
We got married at 31.
You're both 31?
Yeah. We're a few months apart.
Do you think that's a game changer too, dating someone your same age?
Honestly, no, I don't. I don't think I think for us it's perfect. And like my parents are only a year apart. His parents are like 2 years apart.
Yep.
And I think it's great. Like, but it's not make or break. I think what I love so much is more like the cultural similarities than the age. Like, I just want to know that he can like rap to the same song as me in the car and understand it, as opposed to, being like, what is this?
Yeah, you're like in the same zeitgeist. Basically.
Exactly. That's exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. And you guys are kind of young for New York standards for getting married. And I know he's also, like, I say this with peace and love, but is you married a finance bro?
Well, no? Like kind of, yes and no.
Okay, tell me more.
He was a Goldman bro for a bit. It's so funny because he's so not a bro. It's more just like a finance nerd.
Okay.
I feel like there's a few different tiers. Like he was in like healthcare finance at Goldman versus like, like banking,
Yep.
So I feel like he's more on like the nerd section, and now he has his own company which does like healthcare payments. And so, but yeah, I guess he's like, he'll always kind of be like a finance nerd for sure, but not a bro, but a nerd for sure.
Yeah. And I like looked at your Instagram and I'm like, oh my gosh, like you guys are such an attractive couple. But I feel like you did really well, like in terms of like getting a guy who was within the finance space, tall, attractive, and 31. I feel like it's hard to get a guy to settle down before 38. Are there any tricks that you can help me and my following with? Like, what did you do? Or, like, walk us through, the steps that you took to kind of find your guy.
Yeah. Well, I think, like, truly following the rules is so helpful and was really helpful for me. Like, letting him pursue me. I think also I was 29, but I was still at an age where I loved what I was doing because I had my podcast. I had such a great like support system, like my family, my friends. I was like, I think it was the confidence that I was like bringing to the table, which I feel like you have too. It's like, what you have to offer. And
Totally.
like that awareness is confidence. Like knowing, like I'm like, you know, I always talk about like making a list of wants and needs, like a manifesting list,
Yep.
but you also need to be the things on that list.
Yeah.
And if you are, then like you deserve the things, someone with the things on that list too, you know? And I felt like, okay, I have my own apartment. Like I pay my own rent. I love my job. I'm like, you know, decent looking.
No,
like
you're gorgeous,
you know,
by the
like,
way. Yeah. Okay.
right back at you.
Yep.
But you know, like I was like, I feel like I like have like a good personality. Like I'm funny. Like I was like, I feel like I have all the things. Like I
Yep.
deserve someone who has all the things. And so it's like putting that out into the world. And like it's so hard. And this is like another topic in itself. But I feel like as women, like it's hard to like pump ourselves up because people are like,
Totally.
I can't believe that girl called herself hot. I can't believe that girl, you know, thinks she's smart, whatever.
Yep.
But like that was putting that energy out there was really helpful in attracting someone like Steven. And I also feel like just like, I don't know, I wasn't drinking, like I'm sober, and
Yep.
like he met me in my sober state.
Your sober era.
My sober
Yeah.
era, exactly. And I feel like that was also attractive to him. Like before that, like I was not in control of like how I acted in a lot of
Totally.
ways.
Yeah, well, that kind of brings me to my next point, which is why I actually was going to hold off because I know you're traveling a bunch and I was going to try to book you to come on my podcast in May. But I decided last night I had like an aha Oprah moment where I was like, half the guys for my challenge that I caught feelings for, I think I only caught feelings for them because I was really intoxicated. And like, I'm a party girl at heart. Like, I love to have a good time. It's hard for me. Like, if someone else is throwing back a drink, I want to throw one back too. And a lot of times I'll match my dates drink for drink, which is crazy because women are like, I'm smaller than most of my dates. I like have way more body fat, which means that the alcohol hits me faster and harder and all of these things. And so I think I want to step into a new era of dating sober, which sounds so scary to me.
Yeah.
I'd love to kind of hear more about like your journey of dating sober and any, you know, tips that you have for me and my audience, because I did a poll yesterday on my Instagram and a lot of my audience has the same curiosity and, you know, wants to kind of step into this new lane of intentional dating and maybe incorporating, you know, sober dating into it as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you're curious about it. I feel like just to like put out there for if anyone's listening and they're like, I can't do that. That's too much for me. Like
Yep.
I need social lubrication in the form of alcohol. Part of the rules is no more than 2 drinks on a date.
Okay.
And so that depending on like your body type and how you like metabolize alcohol, but that could keep you at like a, you know, still in the right state of mind.
Totally.
But if you are curious about being like totally sober when dating, I think it's so like incredible because you only really like someone if they're really amazing. Like there's nothing that's, you know, clouding your judgment. There's no like, oh yeah, like, you know, I loved the way he made me feel, but like, did I? Because I was drunk and, you know, we were having fun.
Yep.
And I think some tips for dating sober, the first is like to do a date that's not centered around drinks.
Okay.
And this can be challenging because you're like, what else is there to do? But for example, like my first date with my husband was coffee,
Okay.
which like we still went, you know, to like a nice coffee shop. Like it was still like a vibe. We ended up having
Yeah.
tea because I actually also don't drink coffee because I'm crazy.
No, I mean,
But
for you.
coffee, right? Another great date is like, especially as the weather's getting nicer, like a walk in Central Park, something like that,
Yep.
a picnic,
Love that.
going to see museums, like going to the Met, going to the galleries and like, you know, on
Yep.
10th Avenue. You can also like think outside the box and maybe do like a magic show or like
Cool.
rock climbing. And it kind of forces you
Yeah.
to do something that you wouldn't normally do that's just not centered around drinking. And then actually you end up having way more interesting conversation.
Yep.
And I think today in 2023, men, like if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I don't want to be like that girl who's like, I'm not drinking, and the guy's like, okay, you're a loser, you know?
Yeah.
I think that men are way more open to it. There's more excuses. Not that you need excuses, but unfortunately in our society, you might.
Yeah.
But you could just be like, I'm doing like Whole30, or like I'm doing a cleanse, or like I'm trying the sober dating thing. Even just being honest. I feel like that's like such your vibe, is like just being honest. Like
Totally
I'm
blunt.
trying to sober. Yeah, I'm trying to sober date. So like, what can we do that's like, you know, choose a date for us in the realm of not drinking.
Yeah, no, that's actually so helpful. So does your husband drink?
He does drink.
Okay.
He's a normie, as
Okay.
we say.
I love
But he doesn't drink like in our apartment
Okay.
for no reason other than that he's not a big drinker.
Okay.
He'll only really drink if we're like at a dinner and like he's feeling like he wants a glass of wine, or
Totally.
we're with another couple who drinks and he doesn't want to make them like feel weird.
Totally. So is that ever like a point of tension for you guys? How did that conversation go when you were dating? Like, did you tell him beforehand? Because for me, like, I'm not completely sober. I think as I get older and want to preserve my body and like everything, I think I'll probably drink less and less and less. Also, that's part of getting older and maturing. And again, I'm not trying to project my beliefs on other people, like do whatever you want. But did he ever like push up against that, or did he ever kind of like worry about that from his perspective? Do you know?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was really scary for me in the beginning in terms of like, how do I tell him, like, at what point do I tell him like everything? The first time we had run into each other, he was really drunk, and because it was New Year's Eve, and I was sober because I'm sober.
Yeah.
And we were like recounting that run-in when we had ran into each other again at a mixer that I had. And he was like, and I was like, I can't believe you said blah, blah, blah to me. And he was like, oh, you must have been blacked out because I did not say that, like kind of just in a joking way. And I was like, well, I'm sober, so like the joke's on you.
Yeah.
Then he was the one that suggested coffee as our first date, which I thought was thoughtful.
Yep.
And then on the date, we kind of talked about why I don't drink. I just said like it wasn't working for me anymore. And he was like, that's great because like I actually want to drink less. And I think, again, he was just trying to like make me feel good about it. But he did probably want to drink less because at the time he was going on dates, and going on dates meant drinks upon drinks upon drinks.
Yeah, and it's more expensive too.
Exactly, right. Yeah. So I was like a cheap date. And then like I think maybe 6 or 7 dates in, maybe even more. No, probably 6 or 7 dates in, I told him the full story. And I was nervous because I was like, I don't want to scare him away. Not that it's like that dark of a story.
Right.
But I just didn't. And by then I think we had spent enough time together that like he was just like, oh, okay, like cool.
And it seems so silly that I'm drinking so much on these dates, because when you think about it, my day to day, I'm mostly sober. I just only drink socially, maybe a few happy hours during the week, or maybe on the weekend if I'm going to an event. But when I'm looking for a life partner, it's like, why do I feel the need? Like, why am I evaluating somebody when I'm completely intoxicated, when that only makes up maybe like 5% of my life? And the other 95%, like, I'm still like my same fun, energetic self, but I will say that there are probably two sides of me, and the tipsy Marin is definitely different than the sober Marin. So it just seems so counterintuitive that we're all out here dating drunk. Well, not everyone's dating drunk, but like tipsy or intoxicated when you're trying to find somebody who you want to spend your life with. To me, it just seems so counterintuitive.
Yeah, I think that's like so wise, and like I'm shocked that it is such a thing, because you're right, most of your life, like when you're on a road trip with your significant other, you're sitting in the car for 3 hours, like there's no alcohol. Like,
no, absolutely.
I mean, I don't know, some people have crazier road trips,
Probably,
but
that's
when
not
you're
legal.
when you're stuck in the airport, you know, your flight's delayed, like again, some people have crazy airport moments, but
True.
but like, let's say you're in a situation sober, you have to still really like that person and be compatible with them.
1000%. Or you're raising your kids. You don't want to raise your kids intoxicated the whole time.
Yeah.
You're probably going to be mostly sober. So yeah, that is curious that our culture is so alcohol dependent for dating. And maybe that's why the divorce rate's so high. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but it's just
You heard it here first.
yeah, it's just a guess. Okay, so you are also notorious for being the queen of matchmaking setups. Last time I saw you, you said you have 5 marriages under your belt. Tell me more about this.
I love to do it. I actually
Okay.
tried to do it on a bigger scale, like matchmaking people that I don't know, but
Totally.
it became so out of hand because the reason that I feel like I have been successful with the matches that I've made is because they're people I know.
Okay.
So like once I got to know you, I was like, oh, I'm going to set you up with someone. And like it didn't work out, but
Totally.
like that's how it usually works for me. It's like I get to know someone, they're in my life,
Yep.
and then I think who else in my life would this person get along with? And it just makes me so happy because I love love.
Totally. And I feel like you're it makes sense. You have a dating podcast. So when you set me and I call him the lawyer up, why did you think we were a good match?
So it was actually the lawyer who like kind of reached out to me.
Okay.
His friend was very closely following what you were doing. And he was like, this girl would be perfect for the lawyer.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, great. Like, I will tell her, and set it up. And then we were in a chat, me, the lawyer, and his friend. And his friend was like, oh, lawyer, you got to go out with her. And he was like, oh, she's so cute. Yeah, like I do feel like we would get along.
Yeah.
So it was actually him. And these are usually the best matchmaking couples, is the one where the man has expressed first that he
Interest.
wants to get to know the woman, because unfortunately that's just like, the man has to love the woman a little bit more, which I just did an episode on. And so knowing that from the beginning, he was really into it. And it wasn't like you reaching out to me being like, can you set me up with your lawyer friend? But instead it was the reverse. I was like, oh, this is going to work out at least, for a few dates.
Totally. And it was honestly like that. He was one of the top guys when it came to extravagant dates. Like he really showed me a good time. Super nice guy, super respectful. I'm sure we'll stay acquaintances or friends.
Yeah.
You just can't force it though. And like
Totally.
I think at the end of the day it was just like there wasn't gonna be a deep love connection, and it was very mutual from both sides. And like I don't feel weird about that though. Like I think like it only takes one person, and so when it doesn't work out for me, I'm like I'm just one step closer to whoever I'm supposed to be with.
100%.
So can you tell me a little bit more about your parameters for like the people that you've set up? So were the 5 setups that resulted in marriage? Because I know a lot of people like they're sick of the dating apps. They're looking for alternative ways of meeting. Can you tell me like a little bit more of like how you set those people up? So it was usually the guy reaching out to the girl or reaching out to you to then be set up with your girlfriend, or how did that work?
No, so I'll focus on 3 that just
Okay.
come to mind. So the
Okay.
first one is actually my best friend and her fiance. They're getting married April 29th. So I don't know when this is going to come out, but they're getting married in a few weeks. And they're so cute. And I like would always beg her to come to my dating mixers and events. And she was like, oh, and then I was like, no, this one's a really good one. And I knew that this guy who I grew up with, he's like a family friend of mine, was going to be at the event.
Okay.
And I knew they had some things in common that they liked. I also knew their zodiac signs, and I'm into this. And I was like, I know they're compatible. She's an Aries and he's a Gemini.
Okay.
And so I sat them next to each other at this dinner. They hit it off. He got her number at the end, and the rest is history.
I love it.
The second couple, I met her through like sobriety. A friend had introduced us, and he at the time was my manager. And I just like started to get to know her, and I knew him because he was my manager.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, their personalities. And again, the zodiac signs, I swear, she's a Virgo, he's a Cancer. I was
love
like,
this.
that's such a good match.
Okay.
And at the time he lived in LA and she lived in New York, but
Wow.
I was like, you know what? Why not? So I told him about her. He was interested. I told her about him. She was interested, set it up. They're married.
Okay.
Then the other couple, and this is like the craziest one of all.
Oh, I can't wait.
I don't know them. The guy went to Columbia Business School with a friend of mine,
Okay.
and the girl was friends with another friend of mine,
Okay.
like two separate friends who don't even know each other.
Okay.
The girl who went to Columbia with the guy was like, I have an amazing guy if you have anyone for him. And separately, the other girl was like, I have a great girlfriend who's so gorgeous and like just hasn't met someone if you know anyone for her.
Oh my God.
And this happened within like a day of each other. And I was like, okay, tell me more about these people. I don't know them at all, but tell me about them.
Yep.
And again, the zodiac signs, I swear to you, he is one of them's a Virgo and one of them's a Taurus.
Okay.
And I think he's the Virgo and she's the Taurus. Anyway, and they just like looked like they'd be a beautiful couple. I literally don't know them, but I was like, I'm going to set
obsessed.
this guy up with this girl. They've been
Yeah.
together ever since. It's like so crazy. And so
That's insane.
those are 3 crazy stories. And then like the other ones were just like friends I had
Yep.
who I thought would be good with other friends.
Did you get invited to that wedding, or did they send you?
I did.
And did you go?
Yeah, I couldn't go because it was like in COVID
no.
and it was in California because she ended up moving to California to
I
be
would-
with him.
If you did that for me, I would like send you like the nicest gift. Did they send you a gift? I'm not trying to shame them right
No,
now.
no, no,
but
of
I'm
course.
Just like, oh my God, like what?
I think them inviting me to their wedding was really sweet. I actually
Yeah.
watched it on Zoom, but
I
I don't
love it.
think they ever sent me a gift.
Okay. Well, if
Yeah.
you're listening, that's great. Okay. So that's good to know. I did allude to attachment style earlier. I talked about my anxious attachment. I've read the book Attached. I know that like it doesn't come from my parents. It comes more so from my early relationships that were kind of not traumatic, but just like I've been cheated on a few times and I've just had some really bad romantic relationships. Do you know your attachment style?
Now it's secure.
Okay.
But
Because it can change.
it has definitely changed over
Yeah,
time.
totally.
Back in the day, I was anxious because
Okay.
I was cheated on when I was in high school and college.
Okay.
Is it college? I think just high school,
Yep.
actually. And so it was anxious for a little while, but it was kind of like avoidant also.
Okay.
Like I think I immediately put a wall up after being cheated on, so I was avoidant.
Yep.
And then it stayed like in the avoidant
Okay.
until it became secure with my husband, but it took a long time.
Okay. So would you say that through your relationship with your husband, that's how you kind of evolved to that secure attachment style? Or like, because I know you followed the rules,
Yeah.
and you have your own version of the rules,
Right.
which is like really helpful for people who are anxious.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to hear that you were avoidant and you used the rules and that helped you as well. I don't really know what my question is, but do you have any comments?
No, I mean, I think that during like any time that I used the rules, it was like in my anxious because it was so helpful for me.
Yep.
When I was avoidant, I just wouldn't be with that person. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But when I really liked someone and I felt anxious because of how I liked them, the rules were so helpful.
Totally.
And yes, being with my husband helped me become secure, but therapy was also a huge part of it.
Okay. No, that's so good to know. I'm not currently in therapy, and I'm like, I should probably.
Oh my God, you need to
I
be in
need to
therapy,
be.
girl.
I know.
Because
It's
everyone
psychotic
should
that
be
I'm
in
not.
therapy.
Yeah.
Everyone.
So, okay, the first 3 months of dating, since I don't know, I kind of want to amend it because I just feel like 3 months is too long to wait, because I also want to know like am I sexually attracted to them, and like do we have good chemistry, whatever, beyond just kissing. So I would love to hear your take on like the appropriate amount of time to wait to hook up.
Yeah, I always say It's like once you feel like they know you
Okay.
and like they're not going anywhere if you were to sleep with them.
Okay.
Like they're still going to be extremely interested in you. And usually that's after like 6 dates.
Okay, you'd say 6 dates.
Yeah.
And how long should 6 dates take? Is that like 3 weeks? Is that like a month?
I think 3 weeks is like the least, is like the shortest.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So we'll see if I amend that or not. I'm trying to be not so rigid. I'm trying to take, from all these different experts and books, I'm trying to take what works for me.
Yes.
And leave what doesn't, because I don't think that there is just a tried and true prescription to finding love. But I would love to hear your take on dating comedians. I know that I just told you about breaking up with one.
Yeah.
But I know that you've dated a comedian in the past, and I have binged your episodes since coming on your podcast, and you talk a lot about a former comedian that you dated. And so I'd love to hear your take on just dating comedians, dating people in the entertainment industry, anything you want to offer. I don't want to, make you go back to a traumatic memory.
No,
but,
of course. Dating comedians, I would 10 out of 10 not recommend.
Okay, why?
Because most of them are narcissists. And I'm talking about male comedians. I don't think female comedians are necessarily the same.
Mm-hmm.
But I think most male comedians are narcissists. Like, it's similar to why I wouldn't date an actor. They're like obsessed with themselves. They want attention all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and of course there are always exceptions. Like there are some comedians out there who are amazing.
Right.
But I think that most like became comedians because of a lot of like things that have happened in their lives that are unresolved.
Interesting.
And comedy is like their way of resolving it as opposed to like, as opposed to like actually resolving it. And I also think that the boundaries like don't really exist. Like a comedian will make anything a joke, even if that's you. Yeah. And so I think that for like all of those reasons, and also they're usually not loyal comedians. Like they will, like someone will hit on them at a show and like they'll just like go have sex with them. Like, they're on tour all the time and like that comes first to them. Like unless, by the way, the caveat is if they're a very successful comedian. Okay. I think a very successful comedian is less likely to be disloyal, is less likely to be a narcissist because, or maybe more, but because they've made it. I'm talking about like a comedian who's like, will not say no to a mic.
Totally. Like someone who's up and coming.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes back to, Steve Harvey being like, not trying to bring up Steve Harvey all the time again, but he talks about how a man has to be really secure in his career to kind of go on and have a committed relationship. He has to feel like he's good and he's accomplished what he needs to accomplish, or at least on the right path in order before he can be with a woman and commit to her and like fully give her like the world. Do you agree with that?
I do. Yeah. Okay. I do in a way. Like I think either that or the man has to just like see this woman or find this woman and be like, I need this woman in my life. Yep. And like I don't care that my life is a mess like this. So it's either like they have to feel like they're on the right path, they have to love their career, or they have to just be so
obsessed and
besotted. Is that a word?
Beside themselves? I don't know.
I feel like it's a word. I'm going to look it up.
Okay. I'm like, I definitely don't know that word.
Yes, besotted. Strongly infatuated.
I just learned a new word, besotted.
So did I.
Okay, so do you believe in like the alpha beta dynamic within relationships? Like, is there always an alpha? Is there always a beta?
I think the best relationships are when it switches off.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. So with you and your husband, you're alpha in certain areas, he's beta, and then it switches.
Exactly.
So what areas are you alpha and he's beta?
I think it's like situational. Like with my friend group, I'm alpha. Okay. Because like I like am, not like running the show, but like I'm more comfortable in my zone. Yep. With his friend group, he's alpha.
Interesting.
And I think like in situations where like we need to know like nerdy things, that I don't know, he's alpha.
Okay.
And then like in situations where like, I don't know, we're around a bunch of like influencers, like I would be alpha, but like that's not really, that never happens because we don't really go to those things. But you know, like that's like the swing of things, I would say.
Yeah, that's interesting because I know that like the alpha beta conversation comes up a lot. And for me, like I'm a big personality. And so sometimes I feel like I've had trouble because I feel like I attract guys who are looking for someone just to like fully be their mom sometimes. And I sometimes want to be the beta. Like sometimes I want him to take charge. And like, for example, like if we're flying somewhere, like I want him to book the flights and do all of that. And so I like the situational approach because again, like it's not so extreme. It's like you have certain strengths, I have certain strengths. We're gonna like be the leader where we shine, and then the other person can kind of like not submit, but kind of in the spaces where you know they're not as strong. And that's the whole point of a partnership.
I agree. I don't think it has to be so black and white. Like I think that you could have both. I think like sometimes I book the flights, sometimes he books the flights.
Okay, I like that. It's very balanced. How about guys who say that they want to be a stay-at-home dad? How do you feel about those guys?
That's not for me.
Not for you. Why is that not for you?
I just am not attracted to that. I'm attracted to ambition, and I want to be like in a power couple. I don't want to be in like an imbalanced couple where like one person is like a stay-at-home parent and the other person isn't. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it works for so many people. It worked for my own parents.
Where your dad was stay-at-home?
No, my mom was stay-at-home.
Okay.
But I don't think that it is something that I want because I feel like I am really ambitious and I want to be with someone really ambitious.
Yeah. No, I in fact listened to the podcast where you had him on and he had mentioned that. But like, have you guys had the conversation of like, if you ever have kids, like, would there be an expectation that you know, stay home or that you're more part-time?
Yeah, we have. We've talked about that if we have kids, we will both still work and pay for childcare. So
like nanny, would you get a hot nanny?
Honestly, maybe.
Okay.
Like
I love that.
But only like what's more important to me is that they're a good nanny, you know? If the hot nanny is the best nanny, then bring her on, you know?
Because you have such a good relationship with your husband. So
well,
you're not
also
worried.
because like I think that's kind of hot.
Oh,
like,
I like that.
Yeah.
Lindsay, that's amazing. Okay, so I think that we only have a few minutes left, but I did have some people write in questions for you. So I wanted to quick ask you a few of my listener questions. So the first one is, who should message first on Hinge, even if you sent like a like first or vice versa?
I don't think it matters. I think that Hinge is like a free-for-all in terms of who can message first. I think you can message if you sent the like. You can message if he sent the like. Yep. You can message if no one sent a like and it's your first message. You just have to say something compelling.
Okay. And did you have, like, when you were on the dating apps, did you have a compelling pickup line, or what was kind of your go-to line?
I always said something that like warranted a response. Like it was a question, like let's say like oranges or mangoes. Like I don't think I actually said that because that sounds quite boring, but something like that.
Yeah, just like, you know, whatever. I get it. How do you deal with online hate?
Honestly, just by knowing that like they don't know me.
Totally.
And I think you have to just have a strong sense of self and like you know you. And if you're getting hated on for something that just isn't true, then you're like, okay, they don't know me. But if it's something that you're like, okay, this is interesting feedback and like I will take this with a grain of salt or whatever, I'll take this and do something with it, then that's one thing. But usually it's just like a troll who doesn't know you.
Totally. No, that makes complete sense. Okay. And then how long before we met at Acme took off? Like, did you, because obviously everything has a little bit of a buildup, but there's this TikTok where they talk about like Cringe Mountain, and if to be successful at anything, you have to go up Cringe Mountain until it becomes no longer cringe. So how long were you on Cringe Mountain before, like what was the time period before your podcast started to take off and people were like, oh wait, Lindsey, like this is actually amazing, this is actually legit.
I feel like I'm still on Cringe Mountain.
No way.
Like,
There's no way.
There's so many things I do still. Like, I feel like my TikToks are Cringe Mountain, but like I don't care because I'm like, if this is helpful to people.
So good. Yeah.
I remember when I first started, I was getting calls all the time. Like, I can't believe you're talking about sex. Like, what are these poll questions?
Oh my gosh.
You know, like, what did you say in that episode? I'm sure there was like a lot of, you know, negative conversation around it, but I think that for the most part, people were very supportive because it was such like a new thing that no one had really done in our like social scene. So I feel like people were supportive. I would say Cringe Mountain was like, I don't know, the first 6 months, but I didn't quit my job, or like I didn't stop doing my day job until like 2 years into the podcast.
Okay, that's a good trajectory. That's good to know. Tips to continue to date well once in a relationship and avoid burnout. Did you understand that question?
Yeah, I think like make sure that you have your boundaries. Like if you feel like you're getting burnt out because you're going on 3 dates a week, then like go on 1 date a week.
Totally. Yeah. And even me, like with my 28 dates in February, I got to a point where I was like, okay, like I need to start taking care of myself. Like I'm pretty sure I gained 5 pounds, and like, you know, like I need to make sure that I'm healthy because I want to attract my best mate. I don't want to attract somebody when I'm feeling not as confident.
Exactly. Like fill your cup first.
Totally. This girl said, girl, what's your dating strategy? Honestly, I would just direct her to your podcast.
Yeah. Listen to the podcast. Listen to the episode on the rules. It's called The Complete and Total Guide to the Rules.
Okay, perfect. And then I'm going to ask you 2 more questions. The second to last one is, what advice would you have, or would you give your best friend who is dating an alcoholic? Sorry guys, Archie's like having a panic attack. What advice would you give your best friend who is dating an alcoholic? He's a great guy otherwise.
I would say that nothing's going to change, unfortunately, unless he wants to do something about it and get better. So don't hold your breath. And like, if you're expecting him to change, he's not going to unless he wants to.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't have that great of an answer either. And I think that you nailed it. So, okay. And then I'm kind of following, this is what Lindsey does on her podcast. And I'm still figuring out my format. So don't worry, I'm not going to like copy you.
Oh my God, no.
But,
I would love that.
Okay. But I would love to hear just like a piece of advice that you'd want to offer the audience, please. And then also please plug yourself. I've learned so much from you already, but yeah, what advice do you have for people in love or life or whatever?
I always say this, but if you're confused about how they feel about you, they're not interested. And so just take that. Like there's no hot and cold. There's just cold. Like they're not interested if you have to question it. So if you're listening, you deserve only the best. You deserve not to question it. And you can listen to my podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. It's called We Met at Acme, and you can follow on Instagram and come to our live shows in New York, not Chicago, New York, Nashville, DC, and Boston in July.
Yay. I'm so excited to come to your live show. It's going to be killer. Is it going to be just like what's it called? A variety show, or what is it going to be?
Yeah, kind of. It's going to be like a live version of a podcast with like a panel.
Cool.
And then we're going to do some live dating app profile consultations. So maybe you'll be one of the consultations.
Maybe. I mean, if I'm still single, I'll do anything. So thanks again for your time today.
Of course. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks again to our sponsor, First Rounds on Me. If you're tired of endless small talk with an overwhelming number of pen pals, go download First Rounds on Me now and get yourself a real date.